Welcome to Fintech Daydreaming, the podcast that dives into the world of banking technologies and the ever-changing landscape of fintech companies. We bring you real-life examples from global and local thought leaders, as well as experts working within the financial industry, and seek out the best stories from the front lines of financial services innovation, where dreams of industry pioneers meet reality. Hosted by Krogdahl and Ville Sointu, this is Fintech Daydreaming.
Hello and welcome to Fintech Daydreaming, the podcast that does all it can to make financial technology and bad humor somehow mix. I'm also glad to announce that we've officially made it to 2021. And of course, I'm excited to leave 2020 behind us, but also I'm super excited to see that we have been able to start season 3 of our podcast. My name is Ville Sointu, and I'm of course joined today by my good friend and co-host, Krogdahl. So Paul, season 3, how are you doing and how do you like it?
I'm really excited, Ville, actually, to be really honest with you. I think season 1 and 2 were really good. We had that fantastic end of season 2 just before Christmas with some nice Christmas beers and in our new studio. Unfortunately, today we can't be in our studio, but we're working this quite agile and ad hoc, right? So I get to sit here in my home office looking out into the beautiful snow, and boy, we have had an awful lot of snow for the last couple of days, right?
Yeah, I guess we have to talk about the weather. It's somehow become a feature of the beginning segments now. But yeah, so the amount of snow is incredible. I think we got like 30 or 40 centimeters or something of snow. Luckily, I have a garage, so I don't have to dig my car out of the snow. But yeah, I think this is like proper winter, not something like we had last year.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I have a garage, but we have 2 cars, and it took 4 hours to clear the driveway. So, and it's not that big a driveway. I mean, you've been to the house, but yeah, a lot of snow.
All right, good stuff. But what do you like about the changes we have done for season 3? As you just noticed, we have a new intro segment, and we've kind of changed the structure a little bit of the beginning. So how do you like that, Paul, so far?
I like it. I think it's, dare I say, a little bit more professional, which is nice. We improve each season a little by little, and I hope the viewers and listeners really like it. I mean, we're now focusing more on the video, the YouTube channel. So no, it's good, and I really like that new intro segment. Right, the video was good.
Yeah, me too. Makes it look like we actually know what we're doing here. So it's good. Now, one of the things we, of course, are going to keep on doing is our listener joke. I mean, how could we actually change one of the more popular segments of the show? So, Paul, do we have a joke to kick off 2021?
We do. And as always, it is a good but bad joke, right? So making sure I get it right here. So, Ville, what do you get when you cross a banker with a fish?
Tell me, I don't know.
You get a loan shark.
Oh, God.
So that was sent in by Peter Cohan. I hope I'm pronouncing your surname correctly here, Peter. Peter Cohan from Sydney in Australia. So it's really cool. We've got listeners all over the world now, right?
Wow, fantastic. And we love the jokes, just a reminder. So the whole theme of the show is bad humor and fintech. So I'm glad our listeners are helping us keeping that tradition up and running. But on with the show and our main topic of the day, because after all, we're here to talk about fintech and all the cool things happening in the financial services segment all around the world. And today, I'm happy to introduce our guest, who is Johan Hörmark, who is a business developer at one of the most influential financial institutions in the Nordic countries, and that is SEB. Now, I've had the privilege of sharing the stage with Johan in many conferences where Nordic banks were asked to present our progress in blockchain-related topics. But today, we will have the chance to look beyond, quote unquote, the blockchain, and perhaps have a chat about what is no more or less the 4th industrial revolution and what it means for financial services. Now, very grand introduction there for the topic of today. Looking forward to seeing how we unpack this kind of a setup. Now, welcome to the show, Johan. First time. How are you today?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm doing good. And finally, seeing some snow here in Stockholm, which actually makes the days slightly brighter at least. So that's good as well. And of course, thank you very much for having me in your great show here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. You're officially the first guest of season 3, so no pressure. Let's try to make it
I'm
at
honored.
least a little bit interesting. Cool. So, Johan, could you tell our listeners a bit more about you and your work at SEB?
Absolutely, of course. So to start off with, I'm technologist by heart. So I love new technology, and I've been working with tech for over 20 years now. But I always tried to keep the business focus in looking at new technologies. So constantly thinking about the new emerging tech and how it could be used and to deliver actual value into the business. So 10 years ago, then when I started with SEB, the sort of the hot topic of the day was those middleware solutions, decoupling the systems, making the architecture more easy to change and adaptable. So that's where I sort of started my journey within SEB. And then we have seen a lot of new tech flying by and being first new, and what should we do with it? How can we use it? And then finally, adapt it and integrate it into the daily business. Like mobile solutions, they came and they are now mainstream. Social media is nowadays used. Not to forget cloud, SaaS, which that was a bit hard for the banking industry to adapt because of all the security reasons and compliance matters. But I would say now we are adopting it fully. I would assume together with many other banks out there, or I know that we do it together with other banks. And then where we met, Ville, of course, the blockchain and the DLT world. I've spent quite some time with this technology now for a few years. You could argue that it's taken a little bit longer than we initially expected for the industry to sort of adopt it, but we are seeing now, real live implementations that is in production. So that is a milestone, I would say. And also one more area that I currently work with more and more is partnerships, and how do we utilize or how do we work together with partners to build new ecosystems? Making if we and the partner together, 1 + 1 should become 3 then for our sort of common customers. So that is a theme as well in my work nowadays. And then of course the main topic of this show, the Industry 4, IoT, etc., which we'll come back to. I spent quite some time on that the last 4 years, I would say. So yeah, that is a little intro and background of myself.
Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of listing here the things you've been working on, and it's almost like exactly the list of things we have talked about on the podcast before. So starting from the kind of customer centricity, the technology impact of this towards customer experiences, cloud services, the struggles banks traditionally have had and still are having to a certain extent on adapting to SaaS models and cloud services in general, ecosystem building, obviously the blockchain, which is kind of a recurring, almost like a meme in our podcast for obvious reasons. I definitely agree that one of the reasons why it's people still talk about it all the time is because it's taking so much longer than everybody expected. Now, of course, with the surge in cryptocurrency prices as well, it's always coming back again like a phoenix bird out of the ashes sometimes. But I think we're going to have a really interesting discussion today, provided seeing that we're all 3 of us here in the podcast virtual studio today are technologists, and we are quite excited, of course, about the opportunities kind of coming forward with digitalization of the society at large. And like you mentioned, SEB has been very public about their commitment to support the digitalization of Nordic industrial manufacturing segment, or the OEM, original equipment manufacturing segment, for a while now. And for example, SEB has been the only bank taking part in the EU-driven Productive 4.0 program that has over the past few years been researching how to integrate hardware and software of the Internet of Things, or IoT, among friends, devices to the full value chain and ecosystem of commerce. Now, the latest thing we heard of this work was the work SEB did with Ericsson and Stream Analyze to make machine-to-machine payments on the edge. Wow, that's a buzzword, bingo. A reality with bank-grade security. There's an article about this. We will post that in the show notes, of course. But this is hugely exciting things. I mean, a bit futuristic, but I think, solving the edge equation on payments and monetary transfer is going to be one of the cornerstones of Industry 4 and digitalization of the manufacturing segment, for sure. So, Johan, SEB obviously has been quite publicly talking about these concepts like Industry 4.0, Bank 4.0, edge computing, machine-to-machine payments for a while now. Now, what does this all mean, and why do you think it's at all relevant for banks to be part of these fancy new technology things?
Yeah, so, absolutely. So, I mean, maybe not so unexpected, but I believe it's super relevant, of course, and I would say it's for many reasons. I would perhaps, if I were to pick one, I think if you sort of look beyond all the technology that we see now, that you also mentioned here with the machine-to-machine payments and sensors and all that, it's also, I would say, one of the key things for us is the big shift in business models that we see in many verticals today, including the sort of industrial vertical, the manufacturing vertical. And of course, it's driven by new innovations, for sure. It's also partly driven by other factors, the ESG, the environmental and social governance responsibilities. There's also a shift in the political landscape nowadays, with more polarization between the continents, if you will. So the sort of the sharing and the circular economy is a big trend that is, it's interlinked with these new technologies that we see. And we believe that for companies to be able to transform, they also need an array of supporting financial services, and it could also be existing financial services that are consumed in new ways, in more digital ways, more automated ways. I mean, maybe perhaps to be a little bit more concrete on this one. So if you are a manufacturing of some equipment and you want to move into sort of a pay-per-use model, as opposed to just manufacturing and selling as you do today, I think this is very easy to say and grasp on a high level. But when you actually think and start thinking of it, what it actually means, that you need these trusted sensors that measure the time you are using the equipment, and both the sort of the renter and the rentee, the one renting the equipment, they need to know that the measurements are correct, that they are being charged on a fair basis and not overcharged, and so on and so forth. And then on the back plane of that, when you have the data that you trust, then, I mean, today, if you do some financing of an equipment, you have a pretty linear depreciation and amortization of that financing. But tomorrow, wouldn't it be really interesting if we could also tailor the financing of the equipment onto the pay-per-use models? And how do we do that? What data do we need to do that? So I think that is, to give it a little bit flavor on why I think it's relevant for the financial services industry to really be engaged in these conversations.
Yeah.
So
So to trying to summarize a little bit what you said. So basically, it's about having secure data flows, including the kind of pilot that you did with the edge computing. So again, securing those endpoints, and then using that for measuring the utilization of these assets to unlock kind of pay-per-use models. And the last thing you said was very interesting on the financing part. So having this kind of data-driven financing. The one thing that I'm going to push you a little bit on this topic to kind of try to keep it concrete is the machine-to-machine payments part. How does that play into this kind of description of the new ecosystem that you talked about?
Yeah. So yeah, maybe it really didn't tie into sort of that specific example, but on the other hand, a really big trend, and this is also actually part of this Industry 4.0 concept, or if you will, that the industry is now moving towards full automation. So that is a very big trend. I think actually the Industry 4.0, the term that was coined by Angela Merkel some 10 years ago, or her staff then that came up with it, and that partly it was driven by making European industry competitive again, and that is a key element of that is automation. And there you could see machine-to-machine payments and all those new technology-driven financial services come into play. So that is my perhaps answer to that, I would say.
All right.
I think.
So, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, I mean, there is a rapid increased growth of devices. There is going to be a plethora and growth of IoT devices, edge computing, etc. And I sometimes sort of find it a bit hard to understand exactly where all of this is going from various different perspectives. I'm just wondering if you could sort of tie it all down into one exact problem. I mean, what do you see that you're trying to solve moving forwards?
Yeah, that is. I would agree that is not an easy one. I think I will give you sort of two sides to this answer, really. So on the one hand side, as we discussed, we have the automation. So by we can help the customers increase their automation and efficiency if we sort of integrate the financial services directly into their core processes. So I believe the manufacturing industry, they can automate a lot without financial services, our services from the financial services sector. But to really take it one further step ahead, they could also integrate the sort of the physical side, the supply chains and the manufacturing onto the financial supply chain as well. You could foresee that sort of the treasury department is more or less directly integrated into the production and the supply chains. Of course, you could argue that this doesn't happen overnight, but you take small steps. One important first step is to sort of collect and aggregate information so that you get a much better view of how your company is performing, more or less in real time, and that is a big gain. That is an actual problem you have today as a treasurer. You don't have the complete and accurate view, I would say, of the performance. So on the other side of this answer, I would say is, maybe this is slightly, big, but did Apple really know what the App Store was going to go when they launched it over 10 years ago? So I think it's also about providing tools that, it can be used in new ways that we don't really foresee here and today. So it's imminent problems that we can work on and solve, but it's also about some kind of opportunistic features that we would like to launch to the market.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah. Sorry, Ville. So listening to what you're saying there, it sounds to me like the core focus area or the core problem you're trying to solve is more in the corporate space than in the retail space, right? From SEB's banking perspective. Or would you say
that is correct?
Yeah,
that is correct. That is what's been sort of the main focus for us. Now we have, as Ville mentioned here, we have, the sort of the working name, which is Bank 4.0, alluding to the Industry 4.0, and also this EU research project that is called Productive 4.0. It's all 4.0 nowadays,
Yeah. So sorry, Ville, I interrupted you. So
yeah, I was about to say that I really like this almost like atomic thinking. So basically building these cool concepts and kind of having a very solid foundation of these kind of almost like building blocks, and then not trying to dictate that, this is exactly the value proposition we're going to build and everybody's going to love it. It's more about having these enablers and seeing what comes out of it. I mean, it's really hard to predict the future in terms of at least making big guesses on how we're going to invest in this and that type of service, and I hope that it will kind of catch on. So I really like this kind of having enablers like machine-to-machine payments, trusted sensors, kind of securing the edge in terms of machine economy, and then seeing what comes out of it. I think this orchestration of these monetary flows between machines and individuals and companies is going to be the next kind of frontier for financial services, almost like this invisible layer on top of the APIs, if you will. So yeah, I like this approach, and definitely respect the work that you've done in this space so far.
Well, it's going to be really interesting, right? I mean, like I said, there's growth of devices. We've got device democracy happening. Everything from, like you said, sensors, etc., on large factory machines, but also down to wearable devices that people carry around with them. Not just the iPhones. You mentioned the iPhone there a minute ago, but everything down to miniature IoT devices in clothing, etc., etc. And as this grows, it's larger, it's going to be more and more interesting to see where this goes, particularly from a banking perspective. So I think what SEB is doing is really interesting, really fascinating.
Yeah, and then one more thing to add also is I think the collaboration here is also key, right? So both like within the industry, our industry, where setting standards and so forth, that will I think that would be beneficial for the corporates, and also collaborate then with the clients, of course, in various constellations and doing exploratory projects. That's the way we move forward right now, for sure.
So SEB will not be building IoT sensors anytime soon.
No, I wouldn't say so.
But talking about working with customers and those sort of things, one of the things that Ville and I like to do on the podcast is to try and bring everything down to real life, right? So talk about experiences from the front line, I suppose you could say. And the best way of doing that is sometimes to talk about some war stories or interesting experiences that you've had. So in this journey working with Industry 4.0 IoT devices, do you maybe have a fun or interesting story that you'd like to share with us and the listeners?
Yeah, that's you always have this funny moments when you work with new technology, don't you? So we were in this project where the idea was to track movement of goods, some large equipments that were about to be moved on those train cargo wagons, and on the back plane of that we we should utilize the data for some financial services. So we started off. We decided to run a test first, of course, as you always do, right? So we picked up those GPS sensors, attached it to some goods that were about to be transported, and so we could see the movement of that goods on the rail tracks in real time on this Google map with some, it moved. So that we felt safe and secure that this solution is going to work. This is looking great, right? And then we had some 100 sensors attaching it to 100 pieces of this equipment and put on the cargo wagons, and we were sort of excitingly looking at it and to get more data out from the sensors and into our solution. What happened? Nothing. No sensor data.
Oh, no.
Okay. So we started to investigate what was this and so on and so forth. And, the first test, it was done on a cargo wagon with a wooden roof.
Oh.
But the typical cargo wagons were with a metal roof.
Yes.
Where no sensor signals would go through. So that is, that is, it's easy to say we're going to track goods and we're going to do some fancy financial services on top of that. But when you actually, go into hands-on, then you run into those issues. So we still have some way to go, I think, before we have this fancy IoT world that we are talking about and envisioning, right? So, but we find another solution at the end of this. So finally we made it, but this is
hopefully you didn't have to drill holes to the roof. So.
It's amazing actually how such small things can have such big impacts, right?
Yeah. Yeah. This somehow reminds me of the story that I read that now that people are kind of believing these conspiracy theories that 5G is causing coronavirus, they are buying Faraday cages to block any signals coming to their house. And the next thing they know is that they're complaining that their cell phones don't work. So, so it's people kind of combining new technologies with these concepts is sometimes challenging for sure.
Yeah.
But very good, Johan. Thanks for that story. I think it gives a very interesting perspective on the practicality of deploying new technologies and kind of understanding that we need to kind of really do the last mile as well when we actually want to get this done, these things done.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, as always, time flies when you're having fun, and it's almost time to close yet another episode of Fintech Daydreaming of Season 3, Episode 1, no less. But before we close, though, it's time for our traditional end segment we call Same, but Different. And in this segment, we talk about topics that are a step or two removed from the main topic of the day. Now, while there's a lot of really interesting things going on in the world, this time we decided that we need to talk about messaging privacy. Turns out this is a sensitive topic for no other than Elon Musk as well. And the headline goes from Business Insider this time. And we could have picked any news source for this, but this time Business Insider says, WhatsApp is forcing users to share personal data with Facebook, and Elon Musk is urging people to switch to Signal, a smaller encrypted messaging app. Me and Paul, I mean, we've been using Signal for a while now, and it's been really fun to see so many of my contacts that you wouldn't usually expect to use Signal suddenly turning it on during the last week or two. Now, for me, it always seemed obvious that WhatsApp data was being used by Facebook to harvest more accurate data for their advertising business. But things seem to have progressed over some kind of a tipping point now with the latest update to their terms and conditions. So what do you guys think? Do you use Signal? Have you seen new people on Signal? And what do you think about this kind of crowd movement now? Johan?
Yeah, so I've also followed this with great interest, of course. And so I'm probably going to switch now based on this information. But I think the bigger masses, if you will, I'm not sure that they will switch, and it's as always the network effect. So you have to be where your friends are as well. So a slow switch perhaps over to new medias. That is my take on this fascinating story.
Good point on the networks. I mean, you need to be where people are, and switching networks is always a challenge. What about you, Paul? I mean, we've been on Signal for a while. Have you seen new friends joining?
I've got to admit, just like you said, I've seen a rapid uptake of new people coming onto Signal over the last week. But I also agree very much with the statement you made about the network effects. I mean, you use the the messaging tools that your friends and colleagues and network use, right? And I think if we're really honest, that the whole discussion about your privacy, etc., and what's being shared on WhatsApp has been an ongoing discussion for a much longer period of time, particularly once Facebook bought WhatsApp, and that whole debate kicked off. So I suppose it really comes down to, at the end of the day, how willing you are to share the information that's being shared. I mean, the content of your messages are still not being read by WhatsApp. They're still encrypted, but it's how you're using the app, who you're talking to, etc., which is being harvested. I agree with you. I feel safer now using Signal, but it doesn't stop me using WhatsApp. But I will definitely be switching to using Signal a lot more. And like you said, Ville, we've been using Signal for quite some time, right?
And we should, of course, mention that other options are available, including, for example, Telegram, which has also picked up a lot of new users lately. But I think if there's one good thing coming out of this, because I agree, I don't think many of for example, my family members will switch from WhatsApp based on this news, and because of the network effects. It's so hard to migrate your groups and all of those things. So many people will stay. But if there's one good thing coming out of this, is I think it's increased awareness on where the data is being used. I think most people will still be shocked to know that, for example, the Gmail data is being used for advertising purposes on the metadata level, at least by Google, which, again, us working in this space, it's always been a bit of a kind of a known fact, but most people don't really realize. And these types of conversations and news headlines always bring a more light into how the data is being processed and used by these giants. And that's always good. Conversation is always good. Should also mention that.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like they always say, if you're not paying for something, then you are the product, right?
That's right.
So
that's right.
It's been the same with Facebook. It's been the same with Facebook Messenger, etc., etc. And we're going to see new tools coming. And of course, they have to. Nothing really, if we're honest, in this world is for free, right? Yeah. So you need to think about it in that way.
Perfect. The one thing that is free, of course, is our podcast, which you're enjoying right now. We guarantee you're not being used as products by us at this point in time. So, but awesome stuff, guys. Unfortunately, time is already up. Now, Johan, Paul and I would like to give you a chance to let the listeners know how can they find out more about you, and how do they get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than welcome to reach out and touch base and discuss anything. And I think LinkedIn would be the best way. That is, I would say, my main presence in those social medias. So LinkedIn.
Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you. And thanks again for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing some great experiences and insights with us here today. But most importantly, thank you, our dear listeners, for hanging out with us for yet another episode of Fintech Daydreaming. Now, do you have a fintech subject you would like Paul and I to cover in a future episode? Or maybe you have a great story to share and would like to join us as a guest, like Johan did today? Or did you come up with a banking joke or a non-joke that you think other listeners might love or love to hate? Do send us an email on hello@fintechdaydreaming.com or ping us on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, or the anchor.fm page and get in touch. Now, Paul and I will be back in 2 weeks' time with another great guest, and see you all again then. This has been Fintech Daydream.